created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us to this tour around the evolution of a singer's voice. Please.
Oh, del mio dolce ardor, bramato lieto, bramato lieto. Laura che tu respiri, al fin respiro, al fin respiro. Ovunque il guardo io giro, le tue vaghe sembianze, amore in me dipinge, il mio pensier si finge, e violette speranze. E nel desio che così m'empie il petto, cerco te, chiamo te, spero e sospiro. Del mio dolce ardor, bramato lieto, bramato lieto. Laura che pur respiri, al fin respiro, al fin respiro.
I will try to do my best to recall one of the songs that I learned a good number of years ago. You will forgive me if something does not go as expected. To start with, I'm not used to reading from the cell phone, but I will try. It goes like midnight, not a sound from the pavement. Has the moon lost her memory? She's smiling alone in the lamplight. The withered leaves collect at my feet, and the wind begins to moan. Memory, all alone in the moonlight, I can dream of the old days. Life was beautiful then. I remember Let the memory live again. Every street lamp seems to meet a fatalistic warning. Someone mutters and a street lamp sputters, and soon it will be morning. Day and night I must wait for the sunrise. I must think of a new life, and I mustn't give in. When the dawn comes, tonight will be a memory too, and a new day will begin. Worn out and of smoky days, the stale cold smell of morning. A street lamp dies, another night is over, another day is dawning. Touch me, it's so easy to leave me all alone with the memory of my days in the sun. If you touch me, you'll understand what happiness is. Look, a new day has begun. So I remember many years, we have an agreement that we will never disclose our age. So many years ago, when I used to study that, I recall my teacher telling me, since your voice is very unstable, and for that maybe I should put it back. Oh, you saw Katya twice. Let me fix that. Here it is. This is the one I meant. I really fulfilled the list that you can see here. My voice was, it was never weak. I have to say that my voice was always strong, but it was pretty unstable. So my professor used to tell me, you should start with something that doesn't demand too much. Which now that I think about it, I feel very offended about that. I feel offended because I now know what she meant, and I recall that having heard this from Jose Carreras, and this is something that I also have here. I really have. Now I know that I have no really understanding of what was I actually singing. I mean, I already spoke English, but I really didn't know what I was doing. To be sincere, for me it was just memories, and go for the final note. Is either do it too loud or too long, and you're done with the song. I never, you know, and maybe now that I let you speak. When one is young, when one is starting, the singer is always worried about the technical part and showing off. So you say, am I going to go for that song? And the first thing you look for is for the highest note and how you're going to get away with that highest note. Interpretation, context, style of the composer. Of course, we are supposed to be paying attention to that. And somehow the professor is pushing you to take that into account. But the professor is pushing in that direction and you're pushing on the other because you're just interested in singing, right? So if they say, and maybe now that I let you speak, when they say, you're going to sing O del mio dolce ardore, what came to your mind?
It was my first song, but if I were free to choose, I would pick the Queen of the Night. But obviously, I was not ready for that. And like you said, you start to sing and you feel you have a voice and that you have skills and you want to do what you desire to sing. But the truth is that you have to choose a teacher that fits with you, that you can understand and that you can be understood by and trust. Because usually we start young, or we should start as young as possible. And the very truth is that our instrument, our voice is not mature enough to approach to this kind of repertoire. So one day probably you will, but not when you just started to sing. So when I was told, ah yes, you're gonna sing "O del mio dolce ardor," it was like, oh my god, no, but I want to be Violet, Valerie, or Olympia, or well, now I can sing that kind of roles or characters, but when I look back, I mean, there was no way of my early voice singing that.
And besides our somehow very deep inside the singer, he knows he's not ready. Very, very, very deep. He knows that he may mess up, right? With the tempo,
But you wanna try.
with the tuning, your lack of breath. You're already very tired by the middle of the piece. A thousand things. The nervosity. You can be well. Even after years, you can still be nervous. But at the very beginning, when in your mind you know that you are not trained enough, very deep in your mind, you know that you are somehow not as strong. You have the interest, the courage, but deep inside you know that you're not ready. And you say, okay, I am going to sing it is a sharp F, right? The highest note in the Queen of the Night. You can say, I have that note. Okay, but how are you going to get away with the rest of it? It's not only the highest note. You have to polish the color. You have to hit the note to perfection. You know, the tempo in Mozart is also very perfect. So after a good number of years, when you go for that score and you say, okay, it's challenging. But when you're young, you're just thinking, I have that F sharp. What could the problem be? If, as in the case of Nessun Dorma for a tenor, which of course is hardly ever recommended for beginners, and they say, okay, I would like to sing Nessun Dorma just because I have that, it is a B flat, I think, or it is just a B, I don't remember what the Vincero, that final part of Calaf in Turandot. So a tenor thinks that just because he has that note, he can sing Calaf. It's not going to happen. Most likely, his voice will crack after the first minute of singing that particular area because it's very heavy for a tenor's voice. But I also added, as you can see on the screen, that we are not only talking about the point of view of the singer, because we also would like to bring in this conversation the point of view of the public, because at the end, the singer and the public, they are this sort of a binome. They are two parts playing each one. And I typed here that the public usually does not notice the singer when he's starting. Unless the singer is absolutely amazing, usually nobody pays attention to him. And you can go to the record of the greatest singers, with very few exceptions, but the greatest singers of the past 70 years, and they were not accepted. If you take the example of Montserrat Caballé, she was rejected by all the major theaters. A decade later, she could reject almost any theater, so she would choose where to sing, right? But at the beginning, she was rejected. Nobody cared about who would care for a Spanish soprano like Caballé. Maria Callas was rejected at the beginning as well, and we could speak also. Sutherland was not very lucky at the beginning either. She had to prove herself after a good number of years. And why are we bringing this? Because not only the technique and the maturity of the singer is in place, but the role that the audience is playing, it can also impact positively or negatively in the self-esteem of the singer. A singer is starting, and the first thing he receives is critics. At the end, those critics hurt him. He feels hurt because he wants to get an applause, but maybe he finishes his piece and he's just applauded just because he finished. The public can do just that, like, and now the singer feels I didn't do something well. His self-esteem is hurt. Second area he sings, he already feels hurt. And there are many singers who may even abandon the career because in the first, they said, I'm going to try for 1 year or two. If I don't make it, I will just quit, because emotionally they haven't had that level of acceptance. And that's for the majority of singers. When they start their career, unless they are truly exceptional from the very beginning, they have to fight for a number of years trying to call their attention. And when the singer is exceptional, now something very horrible happens, which is the public now expects him to do things that mature singers can do. And now he passes from being just starting, understanding his voice, to now have over his shoulders the highest demand. Maybe they want, because I have seen it before, and I was about to give the name of a very famous Mexican tenor, but now lives in France for the past 10, 15 years or so, who also had problems in his voice. Katia may already recall who we are talking about, because we had those conversations in the past. He was very lucky. Of course, he worked hard, and he was selected and a favorite for singing along with Placido Domingo. But the rhythm of work, the roles he had to undergo, ended up mining his voice, because there was too much demand for a tenor that age. The public, who was demanding too much, should have expected at least 10 years for his voice to be more mature. And that's what, not only his case, in many other cases, finishes or damages the voice from a very beginning. A singer who is in his initial phase and that carries those strong roles ends up always damaging his voice. So I think that, or I would invite people who are watching and who will be listening on the podcast later this today's program, to just think about what role have you been playing with in the initial phase of singers. You just don't pay attention to them because they are not famous enough, or you think they are greater than they are, and you are putting too much stress on their shoulders. Would you like to add something, Katya, to the comments?
Yeah, we have to take care about our voice as one of our biggest treasures. Because if you play piano and you break a string or something, well, you can buy a new one, or you can buy a new guitar, or whatever. But your voice is the one that you were born with, and the one that you will die with. So there is one and only. So be patient, wait, take your time. Your voice is gonna matter at its own rhythm, because we don't have the same time we don't mature at the same time. We are not equal, and maybe you can start to prepare a character or a song, thinking that in the future it will sound different because your voice will change, and you can start to study some parts of the song, but take your time.
The voice will tell you when you're ready.
That's right.
And even if you have a very good professor, just he can always guide you, but it is you who is carrying the instrument. If after rehearsing your voice feels tired, if you have lost your high notes or your low notes or your middle notes, means that you shouldn't be doing that. If you want to have your voice to be with you for at least 30 years, because 30 years of the voice of the life of a voice is good enough, 4 is even better, but if you at least manage to have 30 years of a healthy voice, you're doing great. We all are
Yeah.
in such a hurry to go for the most challenging roles that instead of hurrying, you should be patient. It's very
Yeah,
sad. Sorry, it's
sorry, Ricardo. I
yeah.
would like to add something. My teacher always says, "Is it comfortable? Does it feel good?" Because it has to be the the main guide for your voice. Does it feel good? Is it comfortable? If it's not, stop and change. If it is, probably you are doing it right, and then you'll take care of how does it sound. But the main thing to care about is how does it feel.
Yeah, I can do nothing but totally agree with that. And just to wrap up this initial phase of a singer's voice, I would like to say that the initial phase is when singers are more subject to anything, both emotionally and technically speaking. Our technique has not matured enough. We don't feel our confidence is not good enough. So anything, a bad technique, a bad wrongly chosen repertory, imposed repertory just to sing on a bigger place can destroy many careers. So, but let's move to the following, that is now the maturity phase of a voice, and we are going to have Katia singing now another piece to open the conversation around the maturity. So please.
Okay.
Una donna 15 anni, de saper ogni gran moda, dove il diavolo alla coda, cosa è bene e mal cos'è, de saper le maliziette che innamorano gli amanti, finger riso, finger piante, inventari bei perché. Finger riso, finger piante, inventari bei perché. In un momento garretta 100, o le pupille parlar con 1000. Dar stemme a tutti, sian belli o brutti, saper nascondersi senza confondersi, senza arrosire, saper mentire, saper mentire. E qual regina dall'alto solio, col pose voglio farsi ubbidir. E qual regina col pose voglio farsi ubbidir. Perché abbiam gusto di tal dottrina viva de spina che sa servir. De in un momento garretta settecento, con le pupille parlar con mille. Darsene a tutti, sian belli o brutti, saper nascondersi, senza confondersi, senza arrosire, saper mentire, saper mentire. E quel regina dall'alto solio col poso e voglio farsi ubbidir. E quel regina col poso e voglio farsi ubbidir. E quel regina dall'alto solio col poso e voglio, col poso e voglio. Colpo se voglio farsi ubbidir, sì, farsi ubbidir, sì, farsi ubbidir. Perché abbiam gusto di tal dottrina, viva de spina che sa servir, viva de spina che sa servir, viva de spina che sa servir, che sa servir, che sa servir.
Tell us, why is it that you consider this aria as a good example of a maturity repertory of a singer?
Okay, it means to me, well, one single word, Mozart.
I was about to tell you
I
that
mean,
every time I listen Mozart, I feel like, like flying.
yeah, well, Mozart for me, it's like a musical crush. I like to think that he wrote for me, but
Yeah, nice thought. I would like to think that way
yeah,
too.
it's sweet. But I choose this area because it was my first aria of an opera that was given to me for study and sing. I was finishing my it here in Puebla in La Boab. It's named Técnico en Música. It's a kind of high school. So I was finishing this technical, and my voice was more mature. I had some agilities. I had more line, and it is an aria, but it's not the bell song from Lacme. So I think it is a good example. It's not an aria that you could sing at your beginning, but it's not one of the most difficult areas as Olympia or as Tornami Baguejar. So it is like in the middle of, and well, I feel flattered when the teacher told me, you're gonna sing the Spina. Yay! Now I'm singing opera.
And I would like to mention that one of the things we hardly ever pay attention is that one thing, Mozart is not easy. Whoever tells you, you're going to sing that piece by Mozart because it's easy, is because he
Yeah,
really
yeah.
doesn't understand Mozart at all. Because I wanted to mention, before I gave you two examples of what I think would exemplify the maturity of a singer, that one of the main differences between your initial phase and maturity is that the initial phase, since you have very little criteria to choose, most of the repertoire is given to you. When you're reaching your maturity, that you understand your voice, that you know how well is your impostation, what is the true range of your voice, now you can select what best fits you. On those are the roles that will be your, I'm not sure of the expression in English. In Spanish we say your caballito de batalla. The songs that you will always be singing because they really fit you. Now it's not what they imposed on you, but what you will be doing. And let me provide you with a first example. If you're a mezzo, there are two areas that they will say. If you're a mezzo, you have to know La Habanera, of course, La Habanera from Carmen, L'amour est tan, taran, tan, tan, taran, ta, tararararara, because you're a mezzo. If you're in your initial phase and you cannot sing La Banera, you're not a mezzo at all, right? Even if you're a mezzo and you don't like it, that is imposed on you. And another area that is imposed on mezzos is Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix, My heart opens to your voice, the very famous aria by Dalila. So everybody is expecting you to know Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix, whether you like it or not, in your initial phase, because you're a mezzo and you're expected to know that. But maybe when you reach your maturity and you learn uh, the whole opera, which people say it is in fact an oratorio, but let's keep it as an opera, you find that in fact the role of Dalila, the complete role, is absolutely amazing. Because if you're a mezzo with a very good middle and low register voice, Dalila is your role. But if you happen to be a mezzo with not very good low notes, you will never feel comfortable singing Dalila. But now you know it, because now you understand the qualities and the possible limitations of your voice. And many people know that Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix exists, but very few people know that in fact Dalila has three arias in that opera. One of them being Printemps qui commence, which means something like spring is starting. We will go back to the word spring by the end of today's program, but for the moment, and you may find now that you're in your maturity that instead of trying to convince people that you sing well, Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix, what you really, really like is singing Printemps qui commence. And let me see, because I think I found the score here.
Are you gonna sing it?
Yes, of course. I will sing a couple of parts because I would like to call your attention to some things. The melody of Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix and so mezzos would agree it's very easy. It's placed in a very comfortable register. A beginner could say, and that's why it is given to beginners, because not much is demanded from them. What they never tell them, or if a mezzo is still in the initial phase, she will never realize that Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix is a very difficult area if you do it well. But when you're in the initial phase, people they are just expecting the very well-known tune to be sung well. And now this same mezzo, as she has learned a lot more, now she tends to enjoy the parts. Let me remind you, for people who know this area, that the music, the whole music by Saint-Saëns is so charming. It's like he's hugging you. It's like a very sexy hugging you melody. And remember that also Dalila is convincing Saint-Saëns of sharing a secret. That means that the voice of Dalila needs to have this tone. These low notes have to be, like catching people attention. That's a mature mezzo with these qualities would understand that's what I need to do. And she would go like Printemps qui commence, portant l'espérance aux cœurs amoureux. This last phrase, for example, for a beginner would be aux cœurs amoureux, but that is not the spirit of Dalila. Dalila is such a sexy woman that is catching you with the inflections of her voice. If she's doing that, she cannot sing that in full voice. She has to care for each of the phrases, and so she says, aux cœurs amoureux, peut-être le bel. You see, peut-être le bel. But for a mezzo who starts would say peut-être le bel, full voice, very little care on each of the syllables, but a Dalila that is trying to convince Sanson is not going to convince him by just saying peut-être le bel. It has to be, just try to pay attention to how it has to be sung. Peut-être le bel. You see, the voice is almost piano. The syllables just slip one through another. And if you go looking for recordings, you may immediately realize that the most mature mezzos do that.